edition of Public Interest. I'm Gabriella Patra. We're so happy that you can join us. Joining me is former President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. David Granger. Sir, welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you.
It's always a pleasure to be back on the program, Gabby. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sir, today I want us to talk a little bit about Guyana's or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We're titling this program Diplomacy Without Diplomats. So my first question to you is that this administration promised to reinvigorate the foreign ministry. What has this administration done to fulfill this promise?
I was a bit surprised at the statement when I first heard it. I attributed it to the newness of the administration, that they felt so early that they needed to reinvigorate the ministry and the missions. In that regard, I felt that some of the statements made at that time were unhelpful, they were unnecessary, and they were unintelligent. Statements like, we spent, our time in office just looking for photo opportunities and having trips for fun. I thought it was mean, to accuse the previous administration of spending 5 years, just looking for photo opportunities and having fun. When in fact, our administration had a very clear policy, and it was founded on 55 years of diplomacy. And I think over that period of time, we had a good reputation around the world, and we felt that the emphasis of this administration should be on building on the foundation that was there before, rather than breaking down. When you look at the achievements of Guyana's policy over the years, right now we have been able to take the territorial question to the ICJ. That was the result of hard work by our diplomats. I personally met Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. I personally met Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And as a result of our efforts, we were able to take the territorial question for the first time in half a century to the ICJ. I don't see that the present administration should disparage our efforts and simply dismiss everything that we did. Talking about photo opportunities, I thought it was very mean, and we need to get out of this habit of criticizing. I know the new boys always say, oh, the previous administration was no good, we have to start from scratch. But it's not true. The foreign ministry has been built up by a lot of public servants, a lot of diplomats, and ministers over the years, and we must not expect that every time the government changes, we just throw everything out of the window. There's a lot that is useful that can be built on, and I would expect a more intelligent response to the challenges facing the foreign ministry from the present government.
Sir, how successful were the coalition's diplomatic efforts? I ask you that because the APNU-AMC aimed at economic, environmental, territorial, and regional goals during the 5 years.
The coalition, APNU-AFC coalition, had a clear concept of the national interest. And we paid attention to, first of all, the territorial question. And that is why we were able to move the process further along the way. But it was built on the efforts of previous administrations. But the territorial question is first and foremost. But next, we had an idea of economic diplomacy. And we realized that being members of the Caribbean community was important for our farmers and our fishers and for selling the products of our country. And our economic diplomacy was very important, and I think it was very successful as well. And our environment, Guyana is very fortunate. Guyana is the biggest country in the community, the Caribbean community, in the Caribbean. And we are part of the Guyana Shield, and it's a a treasure, it's a prize that we should protect. And we went about assiduously, working with international organizations and agencies to protect our environment. So environmental diplomacy, our relation with India, our relation with Brazil, World Water Forum, relation with Switzerland, and the Minamata Convention, our relationship with the world environment, visits to Vietnam and Nairobi. All these things were very important aspects of our environmental diplomacy. And the economy, the environment, territorial question, these were very important. And we are a respected member of the international community. And I cannot say that the comments by the PPP administration last year, could be justified given the record of our foreign ministry and the foreign service. I mean, hey, why else would the present administration employ the APNU AFC foreign minister in its present, if he was just enjoying photo opportunities? It's silly to make such a statement. And it is, in a way, proof that our economic diplomacy, our environmental diplomacy, were successful and should be continued.
Sir, based on even though the territorial controversy, Guyana has no resident ambassador in Caracas. What will the effect of the non-appointment of an ambassador there, or what will be the effect, or what is the effect?
Well, it has become an axiom of Guyana's international relations that the three capitals of our neighboring countries, Brazil, Venezuela, and Suriname, should be manned at the highest level because of the territorial threat, mainly, and the need to protect our sovereignty. So we have always had ambassadors in Caracas, Brasilia, and Paramaribo. If there is no one in Brasilia as at present, or no one in Caracas, it means that work is not being done. Ambassadors go there to work. They have to report, they have to engage the host government, they have to promote the interests of their country, which is Guyana, economically and diplomatically. They have to provide representation. And if there is no ambassador there, it means that something is missing, that work is not being done. So I would say that it is a major deficiency, and it will have an impact on our national interests in that some aspect of defense, of security, of commerce is not being attended to because there's nobody there. And it's a mistake. It's one of the several mistakes this administration has made in its 14 months in office.
And in terms of diplomats, this administration appointed 4 resident ambassadors, of whom 2 are politicians. What impact will political appointees have on our diplomacy?
The age of patronage is past. We know that it happened in the past. Maybe presidents and political leaders would appoint, persons, favorites, people with political service to these diplomatic posts. But we can't afford that anymore. And we have decided on a pattern, on a course, on a path of professionalization. It is true that some persons who had not had formal diplomatic training were still in position. But the intention has always been that younger diplomats who were formally trained in international relations be given an opportunity to occupy higher positions. And this is what was taking place. Now, I think we've taken a step backwards. To represent your country efficiently, you need to take a professional approach. If you are to become a judge, you need to be trained in law. If you're to become a lawyer, or if you are to become an accountant, you need to be trained and educated. And if you are to conduct international relations, you need to be trained in international relations. So just taking retirees and pensioners and former politicians and sending them off to capitals is not the best way to promote your national interests. You need to have persons who are energetic and enthusiastic and educated in the areas in which your country's interests are to be promoted and advanced. And the PPP has made a mistake by going back to that old formula, of employing retirees in key positions, and they will not get the best. Maybe they will not get the best service in terms of engaging the international community in those particular interests, in those particular areas. Especially if you're promoting your economic diplomacy, you need to sell stuff. You need to sell your rice, sell sugar, sell rum, sell your wood, and these products. And it's not going to happen. So it's a deficiency which should be corrected. And I hope the sooner they do that, the better.
Sir, I know that you were very passionate and proud of the Bertram Collins College of the Public Service. However, when this administration came in, they shut it down, and they also shunned the Shirat Rampal edifice for restarting the Foreign Service Institute. How could the failure to train Foreign Service cadets affect our diplomacy?
As I said a minute ago, the Foreign Service is a professional branch. It needs to have people who are educated in the particular area of responsibility. Now, I cannot see that young school leavers should be able to walk off the street and come into the public service. One day they're a student, next day they're public servants. I feel that they need a period of training so that they could understand the country, they could understand the constitution, they could understand how government works, they could understand the regional system before they start to perform the functions of public servants. And that's why the Bertram Collins College was, they have to go to rice mills, they have to go to farms to see how commodities are produced, how fish are processed, so that you can go to foreign capitals and arrange exhibitions, arrange trade fairs to promote products. But it calls for training. You can't just, sit down in an embassy and say you're an ambassador. It's hard work. Even if you go to social functions, you meet people, you arrange visits, and you sell your country. So it is a pity that they shut down the Bertram College of the public servant, because after that, people were meant to go into the Foreign Service Institute before they could become diplomats. I don't understand why they made this step backwards, because you end up with persons in your ministries, in your missions, who have not grasped the important elements of representing Guyana. So it is a mistake. Yes, I'm passionate about training, and that is why I feel that these two institutions, the Bertram College and the Shirat Rampal Institute, need to be activated so they could play a role in training our young people to represent our country.
Mr. President, what is the PPP's economic diplomatic posture in the Caribbean? This is asked based on the fact that the Caribbean is a major market for Guyana's agricultural products.
Well, it's our closest market and it's our largest market. You're quite correct. It is all well and good for economic missions to go to the United States or to go to the Middle East. But we have a community stretching from Mexico, which buys our rice, Cuba, which buys our rice, Panama, throughout the islands. And if we cultivate this market, we would be able to guarantee our farmers and fisher folk, our loggers, lucrative returns for their laborers. And this wouldn't happen by accident. That is one of the reasons why I opened the first High Commission in Port of Spain, to sell stuff, to sell stuff. And we had a High Commissioner there, Mr. Ramsroop, who was working, who was engaging with the Chamber of Commerce, who was engaging with businessmen, and who was selling our coconut water, selling our rum, and selling our sugar. Now, you shut it down, and, well, you leave everything to chance. Yes, we will still sell some stuff, but not as much, and not enough. So I do feel that it was an error. We speak about CSME, but it's all talk. We have to make it work. We have to be able to go into aircraft, and see Guyana sugar. We have to be able to go into hotels and see Guyana, woodcraft and Guyanese products. And throughout the Caribbean, we must make the Caribbean a marketplace for Guyana's goods. We must put food on our farmers' tables. We must put food in our fishermen's money in our fishermen's pockets by ensuring that their products are sold in our nearest and biggest market. Some of the places people are running off to are not going to buy stuff from us. They're not. When you see me meeting, Shirley Johnson from Liberia or Muhammad Buhari from Nigeria, I'm selling rice. I'm selling stuff which our fishermen produce, which our farmers produce, which our distillers produce. And that is the type of economic diplomacy we need. And in the Caribbean, our closest and largest market, we earn millions already, and we could double or triple. Look, the Caribbean imports $5 billion worth of food every year. Guyana can go a far way to satisfying the requirements of the Caribbean market. People don't have to buy rice from Vietnam. We can supply all of the rice they need. And we can have a thriving industry, and we can make our rice farmers even richer still, make our fishermen richer still. I mean, growing up, we never had so many fish and chip shops. There's no need for Guyanese to be importing fish or sweet potato chips. We could be selling that stuff to Trinidad and Barbados, the countries that have the hotels. So it is an error not to strengthen the economic diplomacy, Guyana's economic diplomacy, especially in the Caribbean. The Caribbean is close, and it's large, and it's rich.
Yes. Sir, how successful was the coalition's environmental diplomacy? We can say that under your tenure as president with the entire coalition, the ministers and so on, it was exceptional.
It was exceptional because we had a very clear focus. Guyana is part of the Guyana Shield, and we are proud of, well, in fact, Guyana is the middle of the Guyana Shield. From 1989, when former President Hoyt signed made the Langawi Declaration, setting up the Irokrama. Before that, I don't think Guyanese had a consciousness of the importance of the environment. But during our administration, we put the environment center, with the Green State Strategy, Green State Development Strategy. Now, air, earth, and water, those are the three elements of survival. Clean air, preservation of the land, and clean water. Sometimes you go to the hinterland, you see the water polluted by mine, mercury, and in fact, some of the indigenous people who depend on the rivers suffer. The fish are poisoned up. There's pollution. The land sometimes is scarred by reckless mining or reckless logging, and air quality, because of emissions from the factories or sewage and other pollutants. So we set the environment, because the environment is forever. And this is not an expedient, this is not a short-term project. This is forever, this is our children, this is eternity. And if we destroy the environment, we are going to erode the quality of life of our people. And it was a major focus of my administration. You know, as I said, you know, what you're seeing now in terms of the Indian involvement in solarization is a result of the fact that I went to the ISA. Guyana is one of the original signatories to the International Solar Alliance. I went to Brasilia at the World Water Forum. I went to Kenya, Nairobi. Went to Switzerland to reinforce our support for the banning of mercury, especially going into the water and the air. So all of these engagements were meant to support the sanctity, I can call it, of the environment. Our record was very good, and unfortunately, when this administration went into office, it spoke very disparagingly of the Green State Development Strategy. And now that the COP26 is upon us, the administration is unprepared, because the groundwork that had been laid over the previous 5 years was discarded. And now they're trying to have the NDCs put in place. They're trying to prepare themselves for COP26. They find that their preparations are deficient. The consultations are inadequate, and the man in the street doesn't understand what this administration is going to do when it gets to COP26. We have obligations, and unfortunately, there's a likelihood that Guyana will not be able to meet those obligations. There needs to be continuity from one administration to the next, and the APNU AFC administration made commitments and set certain processes in place, and I think it was a disservice to the country for the PPP administration to discard those. And now that we need to convince the international community that we're on the right path, we find that we're unprepared. Guyana right now is not fully prepared for COP26 because it has discarded 5 years of work on the environment, 5 years of work by the APNU-AFC coalition.
Mr. President, as we wrap up, the current administration promised to rebuild international relations. How successful has this administration efforts been?
Well, quite frankly, I don't think there is much that could be said for the administration over the last 14 months. They made a lot of unenforced errors, and I feel that there have been lots of slippages. Part of it is the result of their own attitude in trying to disparage the work of the previous government from 2015 to 2020. In economic diplomacy, they have dropped the ball. We could have made greater headway in the Caribbean. We have the fishing industry, we have the rice industry, we have timber industry, and I feel that with a more aggressive diplomatic posture, we could have achieved real results, especially in a time of pandemic, to put money in the pockets of our fishers and farmers and loggers. This is not happening to the extent that it should. In terms of the environment, we said, we can see that the present administration invented this low carbon development strategy as a means of earning money. Nothing wrong with that. But it is not necessarily protecting or expanding the area that we intend to preserve. And many criticisms were made against us because of the, our placing certain acreage of land under the Commonwealth canopy and the preservation of the mangroves. Now they're dispensing with all that. They're putting profit over people. And as a result of that, logging is continuing, mining is continuing without the safeguards that we put in place. We had an organization called the Corps of Wardens, which protected the environment, COWS, well, and they shut it down. So there are more incidents in the hinterland, in the mining areas, in the logging camps, because of the absence of the Corps of Wardens, which should be protecting our environment. And so at the level of the economy, at the level of the environment, at the level of our relations with the Caribbean, I think we've suffered. It's not about making speeches. It is about going out there with your diplomats, and you have to build an educated diplomatic service. And this is not happening. So as far as I'm concerned, they're trying to, the PPP is trying to almost invent the wheel. They want to own the product. But in so doing, they're making a lot of unforced errors. Now, the debacle with Taiwan, for example, need not have happened, because we have a long-standing policy, and the issue of Taiwan is one of China's core interests. The issue of the Polisario, which we could discuss, we have committed to the Arab cause, and the cause of the Sahara, the people in Western Sahara. I'm sure, I know that I was approached, I'm sure that previous administrations were approached. So we're breaking a lot of rules. I don't know who's calling the shots in that regard, but we're losing friendships, we're losing relationships in the pursuit of maybe short-term profits. So our environment will suffer, our economy will suffer, and our standing in the international community will suffer. The PPP is trying to brand, or to impose its brand of international relations, but as far as I'm concerned, they have not succeeded. They need to go back to the drawing board, see what's been done before by previous administrations, and help to create the international environment, help to shape the international environment on our borders in Brazil, Suriname, and Venezuela, and the Caribbean, and also further afield. An environment that will allow Guyanese to be respected and will guarantee a future for our children.
Well, sir, it's always a pleasure to have you, so thank you very much for being with me. Looking forward to have you next week. And to you, our viewers, we say thank you very much for joining us. I'm Gabriella Patram, and on behalf of all of us here at Public Interest, we do encourage you to follow all COVID-19 guidelines. Goodbye.